everyone, I'm very happy to be here with you even if remotely. In this talk, we'll see how to use some great feature of Postgres as a database in Django. In the database section of the Django documentation, we can read that Django attempts to support as many features as possible on all database backends. However, not all database backends are alike. Did you know that Django framework was named after guitarist Django Reinhardt? However, Django per se is a database agnostic web framework, but real-world projects based on it are not. Postgres has the richest feature set of any Django-supported database, and we'll see in this talk how to use some of this superpower. Before moving on, it's very important that I make this point clear. Okay, it seemed very clear to me, and now we can move on. Okay, jokes apart, I would like to underline that I'm not a database administrator. So, who am I? I'm Paolo Melchiorre, and I'm CTO of 20Tab, a Pythonic software company based in Rome. I'm a software engineer and a long-time Python backend developer. After using Django for a few years, I became a contributor to the project. I also used Postgres as a database for all my projects in the past, and also in Django. And now it's time to create one of these Django projects. As usual, to create a Django project, I use the latest Python 3 stable release. Create and activate a virtual environment, in which then I install the latest Django version. Then, using the start project command, I create the basic file for our project. Let's see what it takes to add Postgres to this newly created project. I think you are familiar with this drawing. This is used on the header of the Twitter account of PsychoPG, the Postgres driver for Python. I think it represents its goal very well. Python with Postgres inside. PsychoPG is the most used and advanced Postgres driver for Python. It implements the Python DB API 2.0, and it's distributed under the LGPL license. The library was released more than 20 years ago, and over the time has been constantly improved and kept aligned with Postgres. Version 3 was released only a few months ago and is still in great development. PsychoPG is a wrapper for libpq, the Postgres C client library. To install this package on a Debian-based system or Docker, you can use the apt package manager, as you can see here now. For most operating systems, the quickest way to install PsychoPG is using the package available in the Python package index. And now let's see how to use PsychoPG we just installed in Django. To use Postgres as a database in our Django project, we have to modify the settings file, adding the PsychoPG-based database backend and the connection parameters of our Postgres database, which you can have locally or remotely. So the engine, the host, the name, password, and so on. If you, on the other side, embrace the 12-factor methodology, you can define a database URL variable in your environment. Depending on whatever you use, Django database URL directly or Django configuration, your databases section should look like something like this, so very slim. Let's now see our database in action. So we'll use the example model defined the making queries section of the Django documentation. For our test queries, we'll only use some models, an author model and an entry model, both containing various types of fields we can search on: name, headline, body text, authors, and similar one. we can perform basic queries like these on our models, but actually we can run these queries using all the other supported databases as well. What we're really interested in is using Postgres-specific feature from Django. For this same reason, in 2014, Mark Tamil, a Django core developer, started a crowdfunding campaign to develop a module to contain fields for a number of Postgres-specific data types. The campaign was very successful, and the new model was merged in Django 1.8. The module now contains Postgres-specific fields, indexes, functions, extensions, and so on. Over the years, important functions have been added, such as JSON fields, full text search, random UUID, and operator classes. JSON fields actually have become usable also in the other supported database, but only from Django 3.1, released in 2020, 5 years after being introduced in the Postgres module. To use all the feature we have seen of the Postgres module, just add it into installed apps list in the setting file of our Django project. And now, let's go to know some feature of this module better. I took this photo during the Spring Day after the DjangoCon Europe 2017 in Florence, in Italy. In that day, I completed a pull request, my first one, to add a database function in the Postgres module for Django 2.0. They merged a few days after this picture. I was helped in that day by Mark Tamil, the original creator of the Postgres module, and by Markus Soltermann, a Django core developer, both in this photo. The database function I'm talking about is random UUID. The random UUID database function returns a version 4 random UUID. It's contained in the pgcrypto module of Postgres that provides cryptographic function for Postgres. It can be activated using crypto extension migration operation defined in the Django Postgres module. From Postgres 13, this function is included in the core of Postgres. To see the function in action, we'll add a UUID field in our entry model we see before. This field uses the related Python module and, only when used on Postgres, this stored in a specific UUID data type. The database will not generate it for you, so it's recommended to use default, but note that the UUID callable is passed to the default and not an instance of it. Using the Postgres function, you can update all the values in a model way faster than cycling over the entry and generating a new value with the related Python function. I recently used this technique on my laptop to set in few seconds UUID in nearly 1 million rows table. So, very fast. I took this other photo during the Spring Day after the EuroPython 2017 in Rimini, also in Italy. I promoted a working group on Django and some developers joined me. That day we started the transition of the djangoproject.com website search function from Elasticsearch search engine to the Postgres full text search and Django itself. Since then, I've written an article and given more than one presentation on full text search with Django and Postgres. So I skip the implementation detail now. But the full text search supporting Postgres module has specific fields, expression, and function. If your Postgres version is recent enough, you can also use specific indexes, phrase search, or web search style. Without any customization, out of the box, we are able to perform a full text search on a single field of the entry model. For example, we can search for a word in the plural form and have results in the singular form. This is a very convenient way to start using the Postgres full text search out of the box in Django and in Postgres. But to speed up the full text search, we can add a search vector for the entry model and use it to create a functional GIN index on the same model. The functional indexes are an addition of Django 3.2, available for all Django database backend. But the GIN index is only available in the Postgres backend. After that, we can search for a word using a syntax similar to the one we use in web search engines and have more accurate results. We can use these syntaxes using the search query with the search type attribute. Furthermore, the SQL queries will be faster thanks to the GIN index we defined before. With this photo, we move virtually in Norway, more precisely in Trondheim. I took this photo because I really liked the effect of these typical houses on the water, all similar to each other but repeated and with different color, like data in an array. The array fields make Postgres array types available in Django. They are very convenient for storing arrays of similar data without creating a new model for them. You specify other Django model field as basis. Also, its size can be defined and it can even be multi-dimensional. For example, we can store multiple emails in our author model by defining an array of email using the email field as basis, without creating a new model, a new table, and so on. We can then query our author looking for an email. The content of the field itself is presented as a list in Python. The resulting SQL code uses all Postgres-specific operator for arrays, as you can see in the slides. Unfortunately, the default array field widget in the Django admin is a simple input text with comma-separated value, so it's not very convenient to insert or remove values. But using this Python package, you can represent in the Django admin the value as multiple dynamically addable input text, more easily to insert it and to check. I took this photo in San Francisco. We are now virtually moving in California because the package we are going to talk about is provided by the California Civic Data Coalition, an open source network of journalists and computer programmers from news organizations across America. We're talking about Django Postgres Copy. Django Postgres Copy is a Python package to quickly import and export delimited data with Django support for Postgres copy command. The copy command moves data between tables and standard files. The copy2 copies the content of a table to a file, and the copy from copies data from a file to a table. To more flexibility, Django Postgres Copy uses a temporary table that are automatically dropped at the end of the session. To benchmark Postgres Copy, Django Postgres Copy will use a file containing all the geographic names from the OpenStreetMap project. We create a new model that maps each columns contained in the CSV file into a field in the Django model. We have to replace the model default manager with the one from Django Postgres Copy. You can see in the code here. Here we use the file with all the geographical names of Italy. The file is more than 200 megabytes. To upload the file, we use the specific query set method to which we pass the file path. The loading speed is very impressive. Almost 1 million records in just over 3 seconds on my laptop. So it can be faster. Under the hood, Django Postgres copy executes several SQL statements, creates a temporary table based on the content of the file, then uploads the content of the file to the temporary table. It do it in just over 2 seconds. It inserts the data of the temporary table into the table managed by the feature Django model we defined, applying some transformation, and finally drops the temporary table. But to reduce disk space and transmission bandwidth, we have compressed our file in gzip format, reducing the size to a fifth. We can pass our compressor file directly to the Django Postgres copy without having to decompress it. Loading is done in shorter time than before, and I want to repeat it, almost 1 million records in just over 3 seconds on my laptop. Okay, now we can move virtually back in Italy with this photo that I took in a wood here in Abruzzo, the region where I live. I'm showing you this photo because now we are going to talk about trees. Postgres L3, exactly. Django L3 is a tree extension to support hierarchical tree-like data in Django model, using the native Postgres extension L3. It's a simpler and faster alternative to implement materialized path compared to more used Django packages. The package has a path field and an abstract tree model that now we are going to see. To add the tree-like hierarchy to the entry model, we add a path field inheriting from the tree model provided by Django L3. We also add a dedicated Postgres GIST index on the same field to speed up queries. This is a tree representation of the example hierarchical structure that we have stored in the path field of our model. I took this example from the Postgres L3 official documentation. We perform a hierarchical query to filter all the contained models of a particular path, sort the results by the tree structure, and then take all the subpaths. The resulting SQL statement uses the L3 operator to filter the table and the GIST index to speed up the operating operation and then sorting. Okay, with this photo, we are now moving to the path of my last hike on the Italian Apennines. I already used this photo in my latest article series about maps with Django, which you can read on my blog. But I want to briefly talk about the geographical extension of Postgres used by GeoDjango. PostGIS is a Postgres extension and it's also the best database backend for GeoDjango. It internally integrates spatial data and has a spatial data types, indexes, and functions. In this chart, I tried to synthesize the compatibility table of geographic backends supported by GeoDjango. In the GeoDjango documentation, there are 3 compatibility tables: spatial lookups, database function, and aggregate function. As you can see, PostGIS is the only geographic backend that supports 100 of the features. If you are interested in using this feature, you can read my article about it. There are also many other Postgres-specific features that can be used directly in Django. For example, you can use a lot of indexes and aggregation function only available in Postgres. You can also use the trigram extension to perform fast searching for similar string. There are also specific fields only available in Postgres like range fields, and case-insensitive text fields, and more. But before saying goodbye, I want to share with you some tips based on my experience as a Postgres user with Django. The first one is read the documentation in the Django website, because it's full of information about Postgres feature you can use directly. Read also the details about this feature in the Postgres website, because it's helps you to understand how things work under the hood. Read also the source code of both projects in GitHub, because there is something you can learn and find only in the code of this both project. Last one is to search for questions on Stack Overflow about Django and Postgres, but try to answer the question by yourself instead of reading the answer. It's a great way to have more problems to solve and to improve your knowledge about Django and Postgres. Last but not least, you can also study this talk because it's released with a Creative Commons license. The PsychoPG library we talked before is under active development, and you can use this contact to learn more about it, get involved, and also sponsor its development with Python Async and all new features of Python and Postgres. The company I work for, 20Tab, is one of the sponsors of this library. In 20Tab, we have developed my many Django projects using Postgres, I think all of them. You can find out more about our open source project and our Pythonic work using these contacts. And finally, to find out more about my personal work with Django and Postgres or PostJS, you can use all these my contacts. With this QR code, you can download this presentation on my website directly. You can also ask me questions using the conference channel. I will be happy to answer them because I try every time to search for new problem to solve and new feedbacks on it. Thanks again for having me, and join the other talk in the conference. Ciao.